Intro. I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the lawful harmony of the world, not in a God who concerns himself with the fate and the doings of mankind. Albert Einstein. During the last couple of years, I've heard this quote from Albert Einstein numerous times. I never understood it because I never knew about the work of Spinoza. He was a 16th century philosopher whose theories are still alive today. During my research on this project, I found many great scientists who believed in this vision that Spinoza had. When Spinoza was alive, he took the world by storm with his great insight. Both Christians and Jews were angry. What he was saying, he didn't believe that God sat on a throne and ruled with an iron fist. His insight was similar to the Taoists. He believed the entire universe is conscious and aware. This was a radical idea for its time. The current situation the world is in is similar to a person sawing off the branch we are sitting on. We are diverse from nature. We are separate from nature. We live our lives consuming things so that we can all hopefully be happy in the end. Consequently, the world is in chaos. Spinoza believed that the universe is in harmony, yet man is not. When a man is not in harmony, chaos exists. Currently, we live our lives focused solely on me. We don't see the unity behind all things. We were never taught that in Sunday school. The great scientific minds of yesterday and today embrace the concept of Spinoza's version of God. That should say something, yet today hardly anybody knows about this great man. I'm 70 years old, and yet only in the last 2 weeks have I found how incredible this man was. He was excommunication from his Jewish faith. He was considered a heresy. He had to move outside of the country. When he moved to another country, Christians tried to murder him because of what he was saying. Such was the conviction that he had. I have been blown away by the similarities between his thoughts and the thoughts stemming from the East. Most scientists don't believe in God the way most people do, yet they do embrace the thoughts that Spinoza had in the 16th century. Let's take a ride together and see how amazing the man was. This is quite the incredible journey. Spinoza and the Tao. I remember once upon a time, my daughter took a comparative religion class in college. She told me that her favorite religion was Taoism. She loved the idea of being in flow with nature and the universe. She loved the simplicity and yet at the same time the wisdom that cannot be described with any words. Yesterday I talked to her and we discussed Spinoza and the Tao. In my eyes, they were so similar. This morning, as I did some research, I found this great wisdom on the unity of Spinoza and the great Tao. Now to compare Spinoza's notion of God as an infinite power or divine nature with Lao Tzu's Tao or the Way, let us consider Lao Tzu's understanding of how Tao, as he defines and understands it, relates to Spinoza's definition of an infinite force of nature. Lao Tzu wrote an 81-chapter work entitled The Tao Te Ching, simply translated as the Book of the Way and Virtue. This work was written in poetic form for utilizing symbolism, metaphor, and simile to express and to explain to his target audience of the Chinese peasant and merchant class the relationship the forces of nature had with each other and with them as human beings. The initial purpose of the Tao Te Ching was to express that there was an observable proof of an infinite force or way or Tao guiding or enabling things to exist, and that all things in existence live according to this universal nature he calls Tao or the way, that dictates behaviors, actions, and the attributes and qualities that define that particular thing. For example, Lao Tzu would poetically compare the natural, untampered with flowing of a stream or river to the nature of a person in harmony with his or her environment. The person is always seeking the path of last resistance or least conflict, like a river's waters flowing around boulders or rocks, as opposed to through them or against them. In Chapter 1 of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, he expressed that the Tao that can be known is not the eternal Tao. Basically, Lao Tzu is expressing that the ultimate force of nature is infinite and beyond our capacity to conveniently define. This type of language and expression is similar to Spinoza's notion of an infinite divine power with infinite qualities and attributes. Lao Tzu makes no claim that the Tao or the Way is a deity or not a deity, but rather his poetic logistic illustrations suggest that there is definitely an ordered design to the universe and an ordered pattern behind all things created. Everything that has life seems to live accordingly to its nature, in accordance with its qualities and attributes and features. For example, a fish swims and behaves accordingly because it is in its nature to do so, and that was created to do so. And to expect a fish to live as anything else than a fish would not be in accord with the Tao or with our understanding of nature. We cannot reasonably expect a fish to behave and exist as we would say a grizzly bear, for example. Dictating why a fish is a fish and a grizzly bear is a grizzly bear is the Tao, according to Lao Tzu, the infinite force of nature. Lao Tzu is coming at his conclusions in a very simplistic but practical way, which reflects a very strong cosmic worldview. His perception, his perspective, or focus, was on the physical world and physical environment around him. His primary concerns were not of the divine or transcendent. What he might have believed in deity, while he may have believed in deities or spirits, and was aware of local bliss and magic, he expressed that the Tao was the ultimate, overarching force of creation and the source of life and death and the directing energy defines why things existed as they did and why things continue to exist as they do. His philosophy based on his belief that mankind should strive to be attuned to their nature and in harmony with their environment and the Tao, and develop their characters in accordance with that search for an all-encompassing harmony is based not on abstract theories and concepts, or by the progression of logical arguments and premises as Spinoza's propositions of René Descartes' meditations, but rather on everyday sense experiences and observant observations of untampered with nature as they occur in the present. It is when mankind tries to change the nature of things, or tries to tamper with, with control something contrary to its design or nature or qualities and attributes, that mankind can expect to see chaos or conflict or disharmony. With this in mind, we see that both Spinoza and Lao Tzu are expression of belief in a universal creating force that is ordered, orderly, and all-encompassing and indivisible. Lao Tzu expects mankind and creatures to be in harmony with each other, and recognizes that to be in harmony, to be in tune with the Tao, the universe shared, guiding, and enabling force that makes everything what it is. Spinoza claims similarly that what he calls God cannot be divided or separated, and that all creation and all that is created shares qualities and attributes of God, that which has infinite qualities and attributes. It is the shared qualities and attributes that connect us with God. It is the notion that only an infinite, singular, creative force, encompassing all possible qualities and attributes, could conceive and create all things, that establishes we have no choice but to be connected by virtue of our creation to the force that created us. Lao Tzu recognizes that free will enable mankind to be in disharmony with the Tao, but he never states that there is ever a total disconnect from the Tao. The implications of the 81 chapters of the Tao Te Ching are that there cannot be existence without the Tao continued infinite presence. Whether we acknowledge it in our lives or not, we are infinitely tied to the force of nature, the Tao. We are subject to them as well as a part of them. We are also able to temper, but never fully control, or reliably harness them completely. These conclusions from Lao Tzu are compatible and are parallel to Spinoza's conclusions about God, his nature. In Spinoza's view, mankind cannot control God or interfere with God's modes or qualities and attributes. We cannot prevent or determine what will ultimately be created or designed through the course of time, without acknowledging that even our intent and our attempts and actions towards disrupting God are inseparable from God. The forces that ultimately dictate how things are and why they are will correct and compensate for our tampering and meddling with the ultimate natural force, according to both Spinoza and Lao Tzu. God, like the Tao, can anticipate and restore order when mankind acts to create chaos. Both Lao Tzu and Spinoza acknowledge that the struggle between God and mankind and Tao and mankind exists, and how the Tao and God react to mankind's acts of free will also similar. Both are also similar. Both God and the Tao remain infinite, and both share infinite qualities, attributes, and properties to enable and create infinite reactions in a perfect, orderly process to ultimately correct for chaos or imbalances in nature, possibly at the expense of mankind, if mankind continues to choose to act discord with God or the Tao. In summary, while Lao Tzu is connecting Tao to the forces of nature, or the forces that enable nature to act, Spinoza's language and ideas of God depict a divine force, a divine nature, very similar in characteristics and properties as nature, or as Lao Tzu puts it, the Tao. The end results of Tao's actions and inaction are the same result. Spinoza has observed in defining what God is and what the divine nature has done.
The more you pay attention to something. I stumbled upon this mantra a few years ago. It came from the well within. The more you pay attention to something, the more attention it pays to you. I know this may sound crazy, but here goes. In the beginning, one meditates on God. After some point in time, God begins to meditate on you. The more you pay attention to something, the more attention it pays to you. It's like a radio station, KGOD. The radio station has been in existence for eternity. It has always been broadcasting. Yet we have forgotten to tune in to that station. Consequently, we live our lives without tuning within. When one discovers the station within one begins to tune in to each moment to that signal. That's the signal behind your breath. It's like a tuning fork. The more one tunes into this divine station, the body and mind tunes into this station. After some point, the divine station starts to pay attention to you. Christ and many other great masters demonstrated this to the world. This radio broadcast exists inside of you. The universe is singing a love song to each one of us. It is custom designed. The operating system, hardware, and software have been there since birth. The radio station has been broadcasting for eons. You just have to tune into it. The only way is to go within. You can't listen to this station with your external ears. You have internal senses that have been lying dormant for many years. Look at a newborn child and you will see what I'm talking about. Note, this is your true nature. You are a part of this divine broadcast signal. Talk to any quantum scientist today, and they will tell you the same thing. You are the universe, and you just don't know it. Roll your eyes all you want, but in essence, that is who you are. We are stuck on a video game of life where we have forgotten our true nature. Consequently, chaos is all around. You can solve this missing piece of the puzzle.
Did Einstein say he believed in a pantheistic God? Abana Spinoza. Einstein wasn't afraid to question religion as critically as he did scientific theory. By Madison Depachich, published December 3rd, 2020. Albert Einstein, during a lecture in Vienna in 1921. creative claims. Albert Einstein said he believed in panentheism, a theological doctrine based on the work of the 17th century philosopher Spinoza. Rating: correct attribution. Throughout the course of his life, physicist Albert Einstein, the publisher of the theory of relativity, affirmed his belief in panentheism, a theological doctrine based on the work of the 17th century philosopher Spinoza. When asked by the prominent American Rabbi Herbert S. Goldstein if Einstein believed in God in a telegram dated April 25, 1929, he responded that he follows a different doctrine. I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the lawful harmony of the world, not in a God who concerns himself with the fate and the doings of mankind, Einstein replied. Generally speaking, panentheism identifies God with the universe or regards the universe as a manifestation of God. The worship is founded on the belief that everything is one and in essence admits and tolerates all gods. Just like the cells in our bodies working together as a whole, everything is part of one infinite being. This eternal, single existence is the living universe, states the Living Universal Church, which abides by the doctrine of panentheism on its official websites. Einstein's association with Spinoza and the panentheism went viral in December 2011 when the famed auction house Christie's listed the God Letter as open for bidding on December 4th, and subsequently sold it for nearly $2.9 million. The celebrated letter was addressed to German Jewish philosopher Erich Goldkind in response to his third book, Choose Life. The biblical call to revolt, which is described by the auction house of having presented the Bible as a call to arms and argued that Judaism and Israel are incorruptible. In the letter, written in 1954, shortly before Einstein's death the following year, the physicist outlined his thoughts on religion, his Jewish identity, and his own search for meaning in life, according to the auction page. In a abridged version of the letter, Einstein referenced Spinoza, but did not refer to panentheism by name. He wrote, "The word God is for me nothing more than the expression and product of human weaknesses, the Bible a collection of honorable but still primitive legends, which are nevertheless pretty childish. No interpretation, no matter how subtle, can, for me, change this. These subtitle interpretations are highly manifold according to their nature and have almost nothing to do with the original text. For me, the Jewish religion, like all other religions, is an incarnation of the most childish superstitions, and the Jewish people to whom I gladly belong, and with whose mentally I have a deep affinity, have no different quality for me than all other people. As far as my experience goes, they are also no better than the other human groups, although they are protected from the worst cancers by a lack of power. Otherwise, I cannot see anything chosen about them. In general, I find it painful that you claim a privileged position and try to defend it. by two walls of pride, an external one as a man, as an internal one as a Jew. As a man you claim, so to speak, a dispensation from causality otherwise accepted. As a Jew, the privilege of monotheism, but a limited causality is no longer a causality at all, as our wonderful Spinoza recognized, with all inclusion, perhaps as the first one, and the anamitic interpretations of the religions of nature are in principle not nullified by monopolization. With such walls, we can only attain a certain deception, but our moral efforts are not bothered by them. On the contrary, Einstein was known to contemplate the many facets of religion and the concept of God, sometimes as critically as he did science. In a commentary published on November 9, 1940, in the journal Nature, aptly titled Science of Religion, the man of Jewish descent posted that he could not easily define the concept of religion, but noted fundamental similarities and difference between it and science. If one conceives of religion and science according to these definitions, then a conflict between them appears impassable. For science can only ascertain what is, but not what should be, and outside its domain value, judgments of all kinds remain necessarily, he wrote. Religion, on the other hand, deals only with evaluations of human thought and action. It cannot justifiably speak of facts and relationships between facts.
The great scientist Albert Einstein. He is recognized worldwide and is considered the most important and popular scientist of the 20th century. Being so important in his time, he was highly requested by many universities to give lectures. But did you know what was the most frequent question asked by students? Do you believe in God? And Einstein always answered the same. I believe in the God of Spinoza. That is revealed in the ordered harmony of what exists, not in a God who cares about the destiny and actions of human beings. What God was Einstein referring to? Who was the God of Spinoza? Baruch de Spinoza was a Dutch philosopher, considered one of the three great 17th century rationalists of philosophy. Like Descartes, in his time the philosopher Spinoza caused quite a stir, because of his way of thinking. They banished him, and even banned and censored his writings by his community. Spinoza's way of thinking is very similar to pantheism. That is, that the sacred and divine is all nature itself. In short, everything that surrounds us is God. Also, according to the author's writing Arne Dielva, the God of Spinoza would say this: stop praying and hitting your chest. What I want you to do is to go out into the world to enjoy your life. I want you to enjoy, to sing, to have fun, and to enjoy everything I have done for you. Stop going to those dark and cold temples that you built yourself, and that you say my home. My house is in the mountains, in the forests, the rivers, the lakes, the beaches. That's where I live, and that's where I express my love for you. Stop blaming me for your miserable life. I never told you that there was anything wrong with you, or that you were a sinner, or that your sexuality was a bad thing. Sex is a gift that I have given you, and with which you can express your love, your ecstasy, your joy. So, don't blame me for everything they made you believe. Stop reading supposed sacred scriptures that have nothing to do with me. If you can't read me in a sunrise, in a sunset, in a landscape, In the eyes of your friends, in the eyes of your little son, you won't find me in any book. Trust me and stop asking me. Are you going to tell me how to do my job? Stop being so afraid of me. I don't judge you. I don't criticize you. I don't get angry. I don't bother. I don't punish you. I am pure love. Stop asking me for forgiveness. There is nothing to forgive. If I filled you with passions, limitations, pleasures, feelings, needs, inconsistencies of free will, how can I blame you? If you respond to something I put in you, how can I punish you for being the way you are if I am the one who made you? Do you think I could create a place to burn all my misbehaving children for the rest of eternity? What kind of God can do that? Forget any kind of commandment, any kind of laws. Those are tricks to manipulate you, to control you, that only create guilt in you. Respect your fellow men, and don't do what you don't want for yourself. All I ask is that you pay attention to your life. Make your alertness be your guide. My beloved, this life is not a test, nor a step on the road, nor an essay, nor a promulgation towards paradise. This life is the only thing in the here and now, and the only thing you need. I have made you absolutely free. There are no awards or punishments. There are no sins or virtues. No one keeps a marker. No one keeps a record. You are absolutely free to create heaven or hell in your life. I can't tell you if there is anything after this life, but I can give you some advice. Live like there isn't, as if this was your only chance to enjoy, to love, to exist. So, if there is nothing, then you will have enjoyed the opportunity I gave you. And if there is, rest assured that I will not ask you if you behaved well or badly. I will ask you, you like it? Did you have fun? What did you enjoy the most? You learned? Stop believing in me. To believe is to suppose, to guess, to imagine. I don't want you to believe me. I want you to feel me in you. I want you to feel me in you when you kiss your beloved, when you see your little daughter, when you pet your dog, when you bathe in the sea. Stop praising me. What kind of egomaniacal God do you think I am? I am bored that they praise me. I am fed up that they thank me. Do you feel grateful? Prove it by taking care of yourself, your health, your relationships, the world. Do you feel looked overwhelmed? Express your joy. That is the way to praise me. Stop complicating things and repeat like a parrot what you have been taught about me. The only sure thing is that you are here, that you are alive, that this world is full of wonders. Why do you need more miracles? Why so many explanations? Don't look for me outside. You won't find me. Find me inside the rhyme, beating on you. Despite the fact that the philosopher, Spinoza, was so controversial in his time, his writings endure various characters, as well as Einstein chose this position, to believe in a God who does not punish, and who manifests himself through everything around us.
Stephen Hawking spoke of the mind of God. Was he referring to Spinoza's God? Answer: Brian Carr. In a nutshell, Stephen Hawking was using God as an illustrated concept to express all-knowing. Spinoza's God is not far from atheism in many respects. He basically believed that the collective energy the entire universe is an infinite impersonal awareness that can be expected to behave exactly as it always has, because that is nature. It doesn't intervene and can't be prayed to, although it can be, let's say, realized for the lack of a better term. So the reality of life or the universe doesn't change much between Spinoza's God and Hawkins' atheism, except that the way Spinoza perceived the universe would have been laced with more mysticism and awe. Some of the contemporary theories of a universe which all matter harbors its own version of awareness and sublevel, while blissfully following the laws of physics of its own nature, are very similar, if not identical, to Spinoza's God, and are probably the most palatable and logical versions of spirituality that someone like Hawkins might be willing to consider. I'm using the term spirituality loosely because these ideas don't include the idea of spirit only, matter, energy, or awareness, all things we know to exist in the physical universe. But then maybe he did consider that idea or even believed it, but just not consider that idea God. That the universe is not aware of us as a separate beings, not personalized, just an essence of life that permeates the cosmos. Is it really God? Or is just a property of matter energy that can lead to complex organisms given the right circumstances? It's a very different paradigm, to be sure, but someone could easily believe that and still claim to be an atheist. I think the lesson here that it's hard to decipher what brilliant physicists believed about God unless they're very explicit about that, because it's so hard to even agree on a definition of God and how that might fit within the universe we know or can imagine. In all honesty, I don't think all the conjecture about Hawkins or Einstein's religious beliefs would interest them much.
Here's the dilemma. The universe is linear, or so it seems. We can travel in a linear fashion, Earth to the moon. Everything we do is linear. We think that God is in heaven, sitting on a throne. We think that angels have wings. Yet, what if God is a multi-dimensional energy? Scientists can only see 3D. God is beyond 3D. This creation is 3D, yet the Creator is beyond 3D. Your true self exists in both 3D and beyond. This is a great mystery. This is a great dilemma. How can something that is 3D find God that is 3D and beyond? This is the true game of life. Find out who you truly are.
An animated introduction to Spinoza, the philosopher's philosopher. The so-called Enlightened period encompasses a surprisingly diverse collection of thinkers, if not always an ethic or natural origin, at least an intellectual disposition, including perhaps the age's most influential philosopher. The philosopher's philosopher wrote Asad Yande. Spinoza did not fit the image of the bewigged philosopher gentleman of means we tend to popularly associate with Enlightenment thought. He was born in a family Portuguese Marinos, Jews who were forced to convert to Catholicism, but who reclaimed their Judaism when they relocated to Calvinist Amsterdam. Spinoza himself was excommunicated by Amsterdam Jews in 1656, wrote Harold Bloom in a review of Rebecca Goldstein's Betraying Spinoza. The not deeply changed 23-year-old Spinoza did not become a Calvinist and instead consorted with more liberal Christians, particularly Mennonites. Spinoza read Hebrew, Pali-Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and to some degree Arabic, writes Mayenda. He was not a Muslim, behaved like a Sufi in the way he gave all his possessions to his stepsister. He was heavily influenced by Gaza, Baba's Tan Orion, and Al-Fabri. He is also counted along with Descartes and Leibniz as one of three major rationalists. Loyal Professor Blake D. Dutton noted at the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, a thinker who made significant contributions in virtually every area of philosophy. One might say, without exaggeration, that it's impossible to understand Enlightenment thinking without reading this most heterodox of thinkers, in particular revealing his ethics, which is itself no easy task. In this work, as Alan D. Botton puts it in the School of Life Introduction to Spinoza above, the philosopher tried to reinvent religion, moving it away from something based on superstition and direct divine intervention to something that is far more impersonal, quasi-scientist, and also at times severely consoling. One might draw several lines from Spinoza to Saga, and also to Wittgenstein and other modern skeptics. His critiques of such cherished concepts as prayer and a personal relationship with the deity did not quantify him as a religious thinker in any orthodox sense, and he was derided as an atheist Jew in his time. But he took religion and religious awe very seriously, even as Spinoza's God is undistinguishable from nature. To imagine that this great, mysterious entity should bend the rules to suit our individual needs and desires constitutes a deeply distorted, infinite narcissism in Spinoza's estimation, says Devoted. For Spinoza, a mature ethics instead consists in finding out the universe works and accepting it, rather than the way of the Stoic or Nietzsche use of the stone idea. It is without such acceptance, what Bloom's called Spinoza's icy sublimity, that true enlightenment is found, according to Spinoza. Or, as the Devoted video secondly puts it, the free person is the one who is conscious of the necessities that compel us all, and who, instead of railing against them, finds creative ways to live within their limitations peacefully.
Baruch Spinoza was a 17th century Dutch philosopher who tried to reinvent religion, moving it away from something based on superstition and ideas of direct divine intervention to being a discipline that was going to be far more impersonal, quasi-scientific, and yet also, at times, serenely consoling. Baruch, the word means blessed in Hebrew, was born in the Jewish quarter of Amsterdam in 1632, a thriving centre of Jewish commerce and thought. His ancestors were Sephardic Jews who had fled the Spanish peninsula following the Catholic-inspired expulsion of 1492. Baruch, a studious, highly intelligent child, received an intensely traditional Jewish education. He went to the local Jewish school, the yeshiva, and followed all the Jewish high holidays and rituals. But gradually he began to distance himself from the faith of his ancestors. Although I have been educated from boyhood in the accepted beliefs concerning Scripture, he later wrote with characteristic caution, I have felt bound, in the end, to embrace other views. His fully fleshed-out views were to be expressed in his great work, The Ethics, written entirely in Latin and published in 1677. In the Ethics, Spinoza directly challenged the main tenets of Judaism in particular and organized religion in general. God is not a person who stands outside of nature. There is no one to hear our prayers or to create miracles or to punish us for misdeeds. There is no afterlife. Man is not God's chosen creature. The Bible was only written by ordinary people. God is not a craftsman or an architect, nor is he a king or a military strategist who calls for believers to take up the holy sword. God doesn't see anything, nor does he expect anything. He doesn't judge. He doesn't even reward the virtuous with a life after death. Every representation of God as a person is a projection of the imagination, and everything in the traditional liturgical calendar is pure superstition and mumbo-jumbo. However, despite all this, remarkably, Spinoza did not declare himself an atheist. He insisted that he remained a staunch defender of God. God plays an absolutely central role in Spinoza's ethics, but it isn't anything like the God who haunts the pages of the Old Testament. Spinoza's God is wholly impersonal and indistinguishable from what we might variously call nature or existence or a world soul. God is the universe and its laws. God is reason and truth. God is the animating force in everything that is and can be. He is not in time and he cannot be individuated. Spinoza writes, whatever is in God, and nothing can exist or be conceived without God. Throughout his text, Spinoza was keen to undermine the idea of prayer. In prayer, an individual appeals to God to change the way the universe works. But Spinoza argues that this is entirely the wrong way around. The task of human beings is to try to understand how and why the universe works the way it does, and then accept it, rather than protest at the workings of existence by sending little messages up into the sky. As Spinoza put it, beautifully but rather caustically, whosoever loves God cannot strive that God should love him in return. In other words, only a deeply distorted and infantile narcissism would lead someone at once to believe in God and then to imagine that this God would take an interest in bending the rules of existence to improve his or her life in some way. Spinoza was deeply influenced by the philosophy of the Stoics of ancient Greece and Rome. They had argued that wisdom lies not in protest against how things are, but in continuous attempts to understand the ways of the world and then bow down peacefully to necessity. Seneca, Spinoza's favourite philosopher, had compared human beings to dogs on a leash, being led by the necessities of life in a range of directions. The more one pulls against what's necessary, the more one is strangled, and therefore the wise must always endeavour to try to understand ahead of time how things are. For example, what love is like or how politics works, and then change their direction accordingly so as not to be strangled unnecessarily. It is this kind of Stoic attitude that constantly pervades Spinoza's philosophy. To understand God traditionally means studying the Bible and other holy text, but Spinoza now introduces another idea. The best way to know God is to understand how life and the universe work. It's through a knowledge of psychology, philosophy, and the natural sciences that one comes to understand God. In traditional religion, believers ask special favors of God. Spinoza proposes instead that we should understand what God wants, and we can do so in one way above all, by studying everything that is. By reasoning, we can accede to a divine, eternal perspective. Spinoza made a famous distinction between two ways of looking at life. We can either see it egoistically from our limited point of view, as he put it, sub specie durationis, under the aspect of time, or we can look at things globally and eternally, sub specie eternitatis, under the aspect of eternity. Our nature means that we'll always be divided between the two. Sensual life pulls us towards a time-bound, partial view, but our reason and intelligence can give us unique access to another perspective. It can quite literally allow us, and here Spinoza becomes beautifully lyrical, to participate in eternal totality. Normally, we call bad whatever is bad for us, and good whatever increases our power and advantage. But for Spinoza, to be truly ethical means rising above such local concerns. It might all sound forbidding, but Spinoza envisaged his philosophy as a route to a life based on freedom from guilt, from sorrow, from pity, or from shame. Happiness involves aligning our will with that of the universe. The universe, God, has its own projects, and it's our task to understand rather than rail against these. The free person is one conscious of the necessities that compel us all. Spinoza writes, the wise man, the person who understands how and why things are, possesses eternally true complacency of spirit. Needless to say, these ideas got Spinoza into very deep trouble. He was excommunicated from the Jewish community of Amsterdam in 1656. The rabbis issued a writ known as a sherem against the philosopher. It went, by the decree of the angels and by the command of the holy men, we excommunicate, expel, curse, and damn Baruch der Spinoza, with all the curses which are written in the book of law. Cursed be he by day, and cursed be he by night. Cursed be he when he lies down, and cursed be he when he rises up. Spinoza was forced to flee Amsterdam and eventually settled in The Hague, where he lived quietly and peacefully as a lens grinder and private tutor till his death in 1677. Spinoza's work was largely forgotten down the ages. Hegel took an interest, as did Wittgenstein and several other 20th century philosophers. But from many perspectives, Spinoza's work constitutes a warning about the failures of philosophy. The Ethics is one of the world's most beautiful books. It contains a calming, perspective-restoring take on life. It replaces the god of superstition with a wise and consoling pantheism. And yet Spinoza's work failed utterly to convince any but a few to abandon traditional religion and to move towards a rationalist, wise system of belief. The reasons are in a way simple and banal. Spinoza failed to understand, like so many philosophers before and since, that what leads people to religion isn't just reason, but far more importantly, emotion, belief, fear, and tradition. People stick with their beliefs because they like the ritual, the communal meals, the yearly traditions, the beautiful architecture, the music, and the lovely language read out in synagogue or church. Spinoza's Ethics arguably contains a whole lot more wisdom than the Bible, but because it comes without any of the Bible's supporting structure, it remains a marginal work studied here and there at universities in the West, while the traditional religion that Spinoza thought outmoded in the 1670s continues to thrive and convince people. If we're ever to replace traditional beliefs, we must remember just how much religion is helped along by ritual, tradition, art, and a desire to belong. All things that Spinoza, despite his great wisdom, ignored at his peril in his bold attempt to replace the Bible.
The Wizard of Light. I grew up godless. I mean that in the best way possible. My parents were devotedly atheists, my father especially so. Do you know that childhood rhyme? Here's the church, here's the steeple, open the doors and see all the... I was well into my 30s before I caught on that it was supposed to end and see all the people. That's because my father taught me a different ending. Open the door and see all the idiots. My mom was so serious about her godliness, though she wasn't quite as dogmatic about it. In fact, she had wanted to be a nun at one point in her life, but living through the ravages of World War II and then realizing all the cruelty that people would do to one another convinced her that there had to be no God, or if there was a God, God had a lot to answer for. So this is how I was raised. Godless, churchless, creedless, without spirituality. I would say except for one thing. Once a week on Sunday nights, we would take a big bowl of popcorn, flavor it with Lowry's seasoned salt, and gather on this couch to watch Carl Sagan's groundbreaking and breathtaking science for the masses series, Cosmos. To say we were fans barely touched it. My parents brought me the hardcover book when I read all the episodes covered and more. We bought the soundtrack. So many Vangelis songs. I even named one of my cats, Cosmos, later in life. And though I can't say that's entirely because of this series, the good feelings I had for the name certainly didn't hurt. Sega, sadly, is gone, but Cosmos is back, headed by Neil deGrasse Tyson. The series had just started its second season with deGrasse Tyson as its host on National Geographic in the U.S., and its first episode has a very special guest. Just having the series back on TV makes me sentimental to the point of weepiness with memories of my parents and I. The closest thing we ever came to sharing spirituality. But add my new friend Spinoza to the mix, and you know I'm a goner. One of the greatest things about Cosmos then and now is that it doesn't just talk about science. It teaches the story of mankind. It defies tucks-in threads of history, weaving together a tapestry of humanity that is full and rich. It was on that program when I first learned about the Greek library of Alexander that Christopher Columbus was not the person to discover the world was round, and how the ancients even calculate the earth's circumferences. About great minds like Tycho Brahe and John Kepler, and that people can interfere with evolution through artificial selection. I'm glad deGrasse Tyson is continuing that tradition. Not everyone has a great mind for science, myself included, and sometimes we need to be tricked into that stuff. Disclosure, I love Cosmos, and because of it, I thought I would love my high school physics class. I loved the part where we covered the history of it, but the rest of it was a drag, and I was glad to scrape by with a low C. In the first episode of this season, Ladder to the Stars, deGrasse Tyson gives a rapid overview of the evolution of the universe from the Big Bang to today, with the iconic cosmic calendar, and then a broad sweep of mankind's development from a small tribe of nomadic hunter-gatherers to overly successful people ready to step off our shores to explore for new lands on distant planets. Along the way, he talks about some of the scientific pioneers who helped us get there. And he talks specifically about the Dutch Republic in the 1600s, which was open to scientific exploration in a way that few other places in Europe were then or have been for many hundreds of years earlier. The name Christian Huygens, his name Antonio Bar Lino Beheck. Then he names a third, about 2730. I would have included the video clip if I could have found him. He was another wizard of light. Banoche Spinoza had been a member of the Jewish congregation of Amsterdam through his teen years. But in his early 20s, he began to speak publicly of a new vision of God. Spinoza's God was the physical laws of the universe, the sacred texts, the laws of nature. He went even further, daring to write that the Bible was not dictated by God, but written by human beings. Spinoza wrote, "Do not look for God in miracles. Miracles are violations of the rule of nature. God is best apprehended in the study of those laws. No one has ever said these things out loud." Spinoza knew he was testing the limits of free thought, even for Holland. To him, an official state religion was more than spiritual cohesion. Spinoza regarded the major events of organized religion traditions as organized superstition. In his view, magical thinking posed a danger to the future citizens of a rational, free society. There could be no such thing as a democracy without a separation of church and state. He wrote a book that introduced the ideas at the heart of the American and many other revolution. I can't help but think of my dear blasphemous father, who made an alliance for spirituality only so far as it brushed up against wonders induced by science. I wish he was still around to watch these episodes, to talk about Spinoza and his philosophies, to talk about the crazy election cycle and the plague that's closing in. Sometimes I just miss him more than others, and Cosmo just brings it out in me. But I'm grateful to Gracie, Tyson, and Cosmos too. They're introducing a new and younger generation of kids to these big ideas: the exploration of space, the possibility of life elsewhere, the urgent need to preserve it here. Maybe some other young girl is hearing about Spinoza for the first time and wanting to know more, or perhaps the name will just be tucked away in her head, laying dormant until some point in the future where it becomes relevant. I hope the young people watching are picking up an encompassing wonder of it all, and they stop to think long enough. I hope they find a gratitude for getting to be a part of it. I owe my gratitude to my parents, too, for instilling that wonder in me, because they cared long enough to make that bowl of popcorn every week and to settle down on the couch and watch a show that opened my eyes to big ideas, and then afterward talk to me about things I could scarcely understand, but talk to me in a way like my thoughts and ideas mattered. I have been so very fortunate. May the other young people watching this show get to have some good fortune. I did.
Streaming live on Facebook with Neil deGrasse Tyson, with Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is a pretty amazing astrophysicist. Neil is an author, one of the most popular scientific advocates in the world today. He studied physics at Harvard, got his PhD in astrophysics from Columbia University, hosted the Cosmos series, which is a modern reflection of Carl Sagan's older series of the same name, as well as the Star Talk series, which is ongoing. And Neil is currently the director of the Hayden Planetarium in New York City, where he's been serving since 1996. So thank you for being here, Neil, and welcome to Meditation Magazine.
Well, thanks for having me. I just want to add, not that you asked, that Hayden Planetarium was where I first discovered the universe when I was 9 years old, as a city resident of New York City, where we don't have a relationship with the night sky when you live in a big city with tall buildings. And back then there was a lot of smog, light pollution. And so the sky created for me in the planetarium dome became an indelible force operating on the rest of my life.
Wow. You know, I actually can really relate to that. I grew up in Long Island and visited the Hayden Planetarium many times as a child. And it really inspired me to be, to sort of nerd out about the universe.
Yeah. It's a nerd safe space.
Yeah.
And I bet you remember your very first trip there. I bet you remember that.
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah.
I remember just those, just the feeling of awe about.
Think of it as, I think for it's many people's first virtual reality experience, because the lights dim, the stars come out, and you're transported in ways that no other thing that you could have done at the time would have enabled. So I think that's why people's first planetarium moments are remembered for a lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely want to get into more of that in a few minutes. I just want to introduce some things here. So first, for anybody watching, you should know that this interview is, we're going to take excerpts and we're going to use them for the Universe issue of Meditation Magazine, which is all about our oneness with the universe, our connection with the universe. It's going to be available in thousands of stores, 20-something countries around the world. And if you're a subscriber in the US or in Canada, you're gonna receive it in October. And if in other countries, probably in November. And if you're not subscribed yet, you should go to meditationmag.com/subscribe so that you can get our print magazine. So I'd also like to introduce the thesis sort of that I have that I want to explore during this interview. So modern meditators, we kind of live at the intersection between science and mysticism. And while mystics and scientists may sometimes seem to be at odds with each other, we also have more in common than we may realize. We're all nerds at heart. We look deeply into the universe and the nature of reality, and we enjoy these explorations of existence. So in those ways, we're kind of brothers in arms, mystics and scientists. So I want this conversation to explore that intersection between science, meditation, and mysticism. Where do we converge in our realizations? Where do we diverge in our epistemologies? But most importantly, let us marvel together in awe at this epic and beautiful universe and hopefully enjoy the ride. Okay.
Well, that's quite a preamble to
Yeah.
Plus that's a lot to cover in a half hour. All right, we'll
Yeah,
see
it
how
is.
far we get. Okay.
So we'll try to roll quickly. But first, I actually wanted to just touch on some recent events before we get into the heavy stuff. The James Webb Telescope, I'm so excited about it. I know you're excited about it. I'm going to switch us into immersive view for a second, so we can have a picture of it, a picture of the. Here you go. This
Oh
picture.
yeah.
Look at that.
Ooh, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, we're talking in the universe.
Well, you're right there too. Wait, you're on this side of me. There
Yeah,
you go.
you can see me.
There we
somewhere
go.
there. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. Okay.
It's cool, right? I think
Yeah.
I love Zoom. It has all these weird features. But the universe, that we can see through the James Webb Telescope, we're now seeing so much more and in more detail. Like, how do you feel about this? I know you've talked about all the cool things about the James Webb Telescope, but how do you feel about the fact that, we can see so much more clearly now?
So I'm going to answer it in a way you might not be expecting. Right. I would say since the Industrial Revolution, maybe late 1700s, certainly into the 1800s, and then into the 1900s, 20th century, exploration and discovery and the pace that has unfolded has basically been exponential. And what that means is, at any given moment, if you jump into that timeline, at any given moment, everyone is saying, look at how advanced things are. Look at how detailed it is. Look at how far we've come. And that is the hallmark of an exponential curve. Everybody thinks they're living in a special time. So correct. I will bask in the majesty of these images. This one is the Carina Nebula, which is the infrared capabilities of the James Webb Space Telescope, enables it to peer deep within, I got to use that a deeper voice, deep within, if you're going to say that word, you might as well ride it with everything for it. The infrared enables you to probe deep into the gas clouds and see stellar nurseries that at this stage of their development are cloaked, shrouded by the very gas cloud that is birthing it. And you would not otherwise be able to see that were it not for the exquisite infrared detection abilities of this telescope. And so, oh, and by the way, I guess I can point to it, can I?
Yeah.
Almost. So the
I can make it bigger so you can.
The spiky objects are simply stars that are much closer to us in our field of view. And oh, can we see it now? Yeah, it's just right there.
Yeah, here, I'll make you bigger. There you go.
Even bigger? No.
Yeah.
Whoa. So that one, and then there's one above my head there, and there's some over your head as well. Okay, take me down again. I'm too big.
Yeah, okay. Here we go. All right, there we go. Now we're
thank you. So those are those spikes, they look almost biblical, right? Because as stars are portrayed in frescoes, certainly the Star of Bethlehem, but that is an artifact of what occurs in the imaging when the starlight enters the telescope. the volume of the telescope, it actually diffracts around what we call the spider mounts of secondary mirrors and tertiary mirrors and this sort of thing. So as the light moves into the hardware of the telescope itself, if the light is bright, it's susceptible to those artifacts of the telescope. And that's why the spikes are in exactly the same place for each object in the image. So anyhow, point is, yes, this is amazing and it's beautiful, and it's way better than the Hubble telescope. This is doing in just a few release images what Hubble struggled to get to perfect over many, many years. However, when Hubble came out and it was giving us images, everyone was saying the same thing about Hubble. This is my point. Okay. Yes, I will bask in the majesty of the data of the James Webb Space Telescope in just the same way I did when the Hubble telescope was finally fixed and was producing perfect images, just the same way I did when the 200-inch Palomar telescope in California was producing these spectacular images of galaxies and nebulae. That was back in the 1950s and 60s and early 70s, because that's how old I am. So be glad not simply that you are living in a special time, but that we are living overall in a time of exponential increase in cosmic scientific knowledge broadly, especially cosmic knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not even that concerned about whether our time is special or not. I'm more like just, wow, this is awesome. You know what I mean? I kind of like just try to enjoy it as we go along.
And by the way, I'm glad you're using the word awesome in this context, because the next generation, when you hear them use the word, it was like, it would be awesome if you could pass the salt. It's like, no,
I would be awe-inspired by this passing of salt.
Save it for when we walk on Mars. All right.
Exactly.
You need some vocabulary for that.
I'm looking forward to that. I've been watching For All Mankind. It's a really good show.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been seeing that, but it's great.
I've saw bits of one. I know all about the series though.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to shift to talking about oneness, okay, the oneness of the universe. And this is something that mystics have been talking about for thousands of years. Scientists are talking about it, and I want to find the commonalities here. So you're a person who is well known for talking about that we are stardust and we are atomically connected to all the atoms in the universe. So can you tell me what you mean by that?
Oh, sure. So I think one of the great gifts of modern astrophysics to civilization was the discovery. This is in a research paper published in the 1950s. So right mid-century, it was a discovery that the elements that we see on the periodic table, the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, silicon, iron, you just look at all those, you say, where did they come from? I remember asking my chemistry teacher in high school. He said, well, we find them in the earth. And I said, well, where did they come from before that? He didn't have an answer. He should have and could have, he just didn't. I'd later learn, yes, we astrophysicists have figured this out. These elements are forged in the cores of stars, short-lived stars, that in their thermonuclear fusion, they merge light atoms to make heavy atoms. The sun is doing this now, merging hydrogen atoms to make helium and releasing energy, because the helium atom that comes out of it weighs less than all the hydrogen atoms that went in. Where did that mass go? It was converted into energy. And right according to E equals mc squared, the Einstein's equation that we all have heard. And so there's some stars that continue this, hydrogen to helium to carbon to nitrogen, and it goes all the way down the periodic table. And then the star explodes, scattering this enrichment across the galaxy. And that enrichment infuses these gas clouds that are about to make a new generation of stars and planets that orbit them. And the planets are made of these heavy ingredients, and so is life. And so you ask, where did we come from? We came from the stars. Yes. And for me, the most poetically accurate way to say this is, not only are we alive in the universe is alive within us.
Yes.
We're not just separate and distinct. We are one and the same. And so often people want to invoke the word special for being different. yeah, I'm special because no one else is like me. I have an opposite view. I say we are all special because we are one and the same of the stars in the canopy of the universe.
Yes.
And for me, that's uplifting. It is a cosmic perspective that does the opposite of what so many other cosmic perspectives do. You know, most of them put you in your place. You're not that big, you're not living that long, but really, we are a participant in the great unfolding of cosmic events. And as Carl Sagan once mused, we might be thought of as a way for the universe to know itself, because we're not just self-replicating life, we have a consciousness. But not only that, probably many animals have consciousness, surely most do, but we also have curiosity about things that go beyond our own survival. And that curiosity takes us into the universe. And upon doing so, we can end up not only asking, but answering questions about origins, about fate, about the future.
Yeah.
And so I celebrate this fact.
Yes.
That the powers of the human mind can take us to where we are today, and we're still going, which is something I look forward to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that very eloquent expression of oneness with the
I'm
universe.
sorry, I'm giving long answers here. I can tighten them up.
We'll tighten it a little because we
I'll
don't
tighten
have
it a
that
little,
much
I
time.
promise.
I have a lot of questions. Okay, so that was beautiful though. Thank you. So that's one way. First of all, I love the Carl Sagan quote. We are a way of the universe for the universe to know itself. It's interesting that Alan Watts, who's a sort of mystic of the last generation, used very, very similar words. And I think that the two of them, one of them looking through a telescope and seeing it outwardly, and one of them looking sort of inwardly through meditation, both kind of seeing the same truth. That's something that I want to explore more later in our conversation. But for now, I want to focus on the scientific perspectives on oneness. So you mentioned the E equals mc squared, that that matter is converted into energy and energy is converted to matter, and matter is energy, right? Because matter is just energy condensed to a slow vibration.
Well, yeah, not to get pedantic, and I hate getting pedantic or semantic.
Oh, please, pedantic, I love it.
No, it's semantic is the word I was looking for. But mass is the fundamental thing. Okay, and mass can manifest as matter. Mass can manifest as energy. That's how you would think of that.
Okay.
And so when we ask what's the mass of that object, you're going to add up the mass, you're going to add up the matter contents, the particles it's made of, and you're going to add up the energy to give you the total mass of what you're describing. So yes, it manifests, and you can convert matter into energy and back and forth. And that happens all the time in the universe, even if it's unfamiliar to your everyday life.
Okay, so if matter and energy are just two forms of mass, right? And they're kind of this universe is really just one big field of mass, right? Does that make sense?
That's yes, manifested in different ways, creating and destroying within its own volume. So yes, that's the most oneness aspect of this as you can.
Yeah.
If you want to be totally about one, there you have the entire universe is matter, motion, and energy just manifested.
Yeah, matter, motion, energy, and really, like you were saying, it's all mass. Is that what you would call? It's the universe?
Yeah, it's not. It's true, but it's not always helpful, because when the mass manifests as energy, it does different things than when it manifests as particles.
Right. So we can break it down, right? We can break it down into its component parts.
Yes.
But we could also see it as this oneness. So we can have both perspectives.
You can, I guess, scientifically, you want to have a point of view. Point of views are helpful when they give you insights into something you can calculate, something you can predict, something you can understand that has just happened. But to just run around and say we're all just one thing, it might give you sort of some spiritual fulfillment, but you can't go out and say, okay, I'm going to use that information to land on the moon.
Right, right.
That's
I get you. And this is actually a really great point. I mean, maybe there are multiple things that we can get out of different perspectives on the universe, right? We can get, like you said, spiritual fulfillment. You could call it like an emotional kind of connection with the universe by realizing that we're one with it. Not just an emotional, it's kind of like there's a transcendence there.
yeah.
It's something that makes us feel infinite, and it's something that it's a very powerful feeling.
Yeah, it can,
Um,
and provided you not only know it, but sort of think about it in a very positive way. There's a lot of energy that destroys things, right? So I think you want to take the right slice through that pie and reflect on it in ways that do leave you at the end of the day smiling rather than crying.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, I wanted to just go into sort of like a little reflection on this, because I think that we can get so much knowledge from science, but I think also that that knowledge can inform our meditations. They can inform our reflections on reality when we look inside of ourselves. So if we didn't know that, you know, the universe is one giant field of mass, it takes a while to get to the conclusion that everything is one. Like from the mystic's perspective, it can take years of meditation to realize this through other means. But when we realize through science that it's all one field of mass, then we can just meditate on that for a moment and really feel that transcendence. So would you want to just close your eyes with me for a moment and just
Oh, sure.
feel that? Let's just take a moment just to feel the body sitting here. So you feel like all the sensations in your body from the top of your head to the bottoms of your feet and your palms of your hands. You feel your whole body sitting here. And this that we, you know, feel as sensations, like our arms and our legs, we call them sensations. We're experiencing something. We're experiencing the body. And if we just take a moment to realize that this body is mass, and the air around us is mass, and everything around us in the whole universe is mass, we can feel where does the edge of me end and the beginning of the universe begin. We can feel that we are just part of this infinite or gigantic field of mass, just sitting here experiencing that. Well, it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to feel it. And that's why I like to bring these realizations of this, we are part of this field of mass that we call the universe, to bring it into that feeling space and just feel it. And just blinking our eyes back open, coming back here into this conversation.
So I like the idea that, well, where do I end and the universe begin? And there are other factors here, by the way. There are gravitational fields, there are electric fields. The fields is an idea put forth by Michael Faraday in the middle 1800s. Because think about it, you can't see a field. You can see what the field does. And we all did this as children. You'd sprinkle iron filings on a magnet and you can see the iron filings line up. Well, how did they know what's going on? So fields exist and they're real. And we have gravitational field, not external to our body. It actually permeates our body. And so this idea that where do I end and the universe begin? I like that concept. Just meditationally, I think it's a powerful idea.
Yeah, and I think that just when we bring like these realizations into just closing our eyes and just feeling it, it can really enhance our appreciation for these scientific discoveries. The same way that the scientific discoveries can enhance our meditations. It kind of goes both ways. You know what I mean? That's why I say that mysticism and science can go hand in hand in certain ways. So, okay, I wanted to shift into the spirituality of science. You know, I feel like we've kind of covered this actually. So but spirituality is a word in its own. Like mysticism is one thing, but spirituality is another thing. Do you feel like there's a certain kind of spirituality that can be felt through the practice of science?
Let me answer that in a reverse way.
Hmm.
All right. So I spent a lot of my time in graduate school ascending mountaintops,
Hmm.
okay, where the telescopes are. You know,
Cool.
why do astronomers go to mountains? Because that's where the telescopes are.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's the guy who robbed banks? Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is, right? There's certain blunt, true answers.
Mhm.
And often it involves what was felt like almost a pilgrimage, because the
Hmm.
mountains are not nearby. They're certainly not near cities. So you have to fly to some place and then take, you know, a bus and then some vehicle up the mountain. Then you have to, this is in my day, things are a little different today, but in my day, then you'd have to flip your living so that you go nocturnal.
Hmm.
Then you have this relationship with a telescope. It's you, this eye to the universe, and the universe.
Hmm.
And you collect data on, not digitally in modern times, of course it's done digitally, and then you go back home with this this disk of data, and then you decode the operations of nature. What I can tell you is when I'm on the mountaintop, especially on some occasions where clouds roll in, and if the mountain's high enough, it's above the clouds, right? And if the moon is out, the moon is illuminating the tops of the clouds. And so it's you, the tops of clouds, the moon, and the rest of the universe. It's like you're on Mount Olympus or something where you don't even know if there's an earth below you. You're just floating.
Wow.
And having been a fan of the universe since I was 9, to be in that moment, I don't know how else to describe it other than it being intellectually spiritual. In the sense that I wasn't thinking, well, how many stars are there and what are they made of? And it wasn't so analytical as much as it was emotional.
Yeah.
And of course, people have their own way they use the word spirit. And like I said, I don't like arguing word definitions, but I think spirituality, which has historically been owned by organized religion, in recent decades, I think has escaped that boundary. And now people will say they're spiritual, but not religious, because I think they have some feeling of their place in the universe. And from that feeling and from those thoughts, they derive pleasure. So I'm happy to think of the word spiritual in that context. And in that context, I can say without hesitation, I have felt that about the universe.
Yeah, that's a very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I want to go into some questions, like deep questions about the universe, which we can hopefully do like a sort of quick, lightning round kind of questions.
Okay, I'll keep shortening my answers. Okay, sorry.
They're
You
beautiful.
came too
I
curious,
wish
you know? You can't come to a 30-minute conversation and have 80 questions, right?
I know, but I have so many questions for you, Neil.
All
Okay. So, do you see the universe as finite or infinite?
Yeah, so I follow where the evidence takes me. So it's not what I believe to be true, is what does the evidence say? Our horizon is finite. In the same way, a ship at sea can only view to its own horizon. But if it keeps traveling, it sees a different horizon than it did a few moments ago. And so does the person in the ship say, wow, it's ocean in every direction, the ocean must be infinite? No, they think there might be land. Okay, fine. Do they say, I see a horizon in every direction? Is that the end of the ocean? No, they're not saying that if they have any experience at all. We do not know how big the actual universe is beyond our horizon. Could be infinite for all we know. But to our horizon, light has been traveling since the Big Bang, and the light we see is nearly 14 billion years old.
Okay.
So the universe is itself like a time machine.
Yeah. So I like that you have that agnostic view where it's, we can see to where we can see, and then who knows, maybe after that it's infinite. We don't know.
Yeah, of course. That's right.
So I appreciate the agnosticism as like a skeptic myself. So I wanted to ask you another question. So we talk about the Big Bang being 14 billion years ago, and that it has been expanding since that, whatever. So this is the theory of that we use in cosmology right now. But where did the Big Bang come from? Why did it happen instead of nothing? Why is there anything instead of nothing?
I'm happy to answer that. We don't know. That's the answer. It's one of the great frontiers of modern cosmology. And there's some good reason to think that the Big Bang might be one of multiple bangs that unfolded out of a multiverse. That's where the multiverse is, this collection of universes, ours among them. And if that's the case, it just really shifts the question, what started the multiverse, right? So I'm not doing this as the end all answer. I'm saying the beginning of our universe, even if known one day, just pushes your question back a notch.
It's true.
And so these are frontiers of research.
It's an infinite regression, right? We can't really
Well, we don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I don't know. There's that mystical thing of it's turtles all the way down. I don't know if you've heard that story.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, we just it's very difficult for us to contemplate it. Maybe science will figure it out. Maybe it won't. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't have a. I mean,
But
all frontiers are difficult. That's why they're sitting on the frontier and unsolved. But I don't fear those answers or those questions.
right.
It's very natural. By the way, what began Earth? Well, we know how Earth formed. But there was a day that was was the Earth always here? Or did God make it in 6 days?
That's
what,
true.
yeah,
You're right. Maybe
so,
just the way we.
Origins is actually been a very fertile path of investigation in modern astrophysics. We know the origin of Earth and our sun, and James Webb is going to help us get the origin of galaxies, right? And so this origins question, as challenging as it is not intractable.
Right, but we can know the origin of the Earth because it's a part of the universe. And we can maybe know the origin of the universe, maybe even. But
as part of the multiverse, yes.
Yeah, but what about at the end of that regression, right, at the foundation of reality, we say, okay, what started anything? Why does anything exist? Maybe we don't know that now. Maybe science will figure it out eventually. But there's this sort of ancient mystical perspective, which I think is at the foundation of what Abraham saw when he talked about one God, and what Buddhists saw when they talk about oneness. And what I think that is that foundation, we won't use the words God or things like that to label it, but is that there must be some aspect of reality, some law of nature that allows for anything to exist at all. Maybe that, that's the most fundamental law, because the Big Bang couldn't have happened if there wasn't a law of reality that allowed for anything to exist in the first place.
Based on my read of the history of science, I will never use the word must in trying to understand a cosmic frontier, because you're putting a bias on it. You need to have some prime force to begin things in order for you to feel comfortable about your philosophy of how the world works. I have divorced myself from such requirements. Maybe the universe always was. Maybe the death of a universe births another universe so that it's cyclical. And if it's cyclical, then it was always cyclical. It could be any of these. I will never say it must be one thing or another.
But in either of those scenarios, if everything has always existed, or in the cyclical universe, like Roger Penrose talks about the cyclical universe theory or whatever, cyclical cosmology, in any of those cases, there has to be some nature of reality that allows for things to exist, right? Because if there wasn't, then nothing would exist. It has to be a fundamental law.
Okay, so you get into a Goodell problem here, where can a system of laws exist as a contained unit describing everything within the system without some system of laws outside of it giving meaning and purpose and existence to those laws themselves? So that's an interesting sort of philosophical.
Well, I don't know if it has to be outside of it.
Well, in Goodell's theorem, it has to be, you have to come in from the outside and say, here, it's a throwdown, it's a mic drop, it's here, this is what start with this, and then everything can work within the system. The system cannot define itself without a completely arbitrary declaration from the outside saying what those laws need to be. And so this is the Goodell incompleteness theorem. I paraphrased it for this example, but so you can go there. I'm just saying, I'm not requiring that of the universe. That's all. I'm letting the universe be how it reveals itself to us.
Okay.
And oh, and by the way, there are people who say, well, God did it. And well, I'll say, well, then who created God?
Right,
And
exactly.
somehow they're completely content with the answer God always was.
But see, that's what I'm saying is that when people say God did it, right? If they created, basically God that people think of nowadays often is like this sort of old man in the sky, right?
The monotheism God, yeah.
So who created that? Okay, so that still lends itself to, but so the old man in the sky is sort of, you're seeing it as separate from the fabric of reality itself. But if
Yeah,
we're
except they should respond to the question, who created God? And their answer in every time I've posed that question is God always was. So they're completely content with saying God always was, but not content in saying the universe always was. And that's not fair.
Right, I agree with you, and I think that's why there are mystics within even religions that see God as synonymous with the universe. And
Yeah.
I'm not just talking about
Yeah,
our
this
Big Bang
Spinoza,
universe.
for example, and by the way, Spinoza's God, if you want to refer to it that way, was the laws of physics and the laws of nature are the manifestation of a cosmic God, not the bearded man in the sky, not the one who cares who you sleep with, or what your Supreme Court does. It's just the laws of nature as we discover them are the manifestations of a divine presence. And that, by the way, is completely compatible with science. Whatever science says, you're happy that God, we're cool here. And it's when God starts becoming a little more participatory in your own life's conduct, that things get really messy, and one group wants to create rules that constrain the freedoms of another group who don't believe the same thing. So that's where things get really weird.
No, I totally agree with you. But let's not get into that because that's a whole can of worms. But I love that you brought up Spinoza. I actually have a quote from him that I wrote down, what he described as God is the indwelling and not the transient cause of all things. So not some God that just created the universe and then grabbed some popcorn to watch the drama unfold, but basically the fundamental laws of physics, like you're saying, that allows for all of this to exist. And that's kind of what I'm talking about with that fundamental law of reality. I think that allows for anything to exist. I think that's what Spinoza saw as God. And I wonder, if I think that, to me, that's something that must be there. But I guess I do appreciate your agnosticism about that.
Well, our version of that would be the unified field theory.
Yeah.
So all laws of nature that we have discovered here on Earth, which have experimentally been shown to apply across space and across time, because as I said earlier, as we look out in space, we're looking back in time and we see the same laws of physics manifested. All our thinking today suggests that in the very first moments after the Big Bang, just at the beginning, all forces of nature were one. And as the universe cooled, these forces of nature separated out until today we have, count them, 4 forces of nature. And but you go back in time, there's 3, then 2, then 1. And that one force of nature would be the unified field theory, which is the holy grail for many physicists. And I think that comes closest to what you're describing.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for putting that into context in the scientific terminology. I appreciate that. So I know we only have a couple more minutes, so I just wanted to end on something that I think is really important for the spiritual community.
I'll give really short answers if you want to squeeze in some more questions. Okay.
Okay, great.
Go.
This is really important for the spiritual community. I've heard physicists talking about how some people in the spiritual community or the mystical community, whatever, misuse quantum physics and maybe misstate it or misunderstand it. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe, can you think of any examples of that you would like to try to not refute, but at least clarify for our readers?
So I think what's going on here is quantum physics, which is one of the most successful theories of the universe ever discovered, And by the way, we are in the centennial anniversary of the discovery of quantum physics. Most of it happened in the 1920s, and Nobel Prizes all around for each little bit of discovery that contributed to this whole understanding of the universe. Quantum physics has really weird, wacky, spooky things that are real, but completely defy anybody's common sense, anybody's classical understanding of how the world works or how the world should work. But it's true nonetheless, experimentally verified. So what has happened is you get people who see the spooky stuff in quantum physics, which we don't have a classical explanation for. We just say, oh, the particle pops into existence and it pops out of existence. We know the frequency with which that happens and how it happens and how much energy it has, but we can't predict exactly that particle. There are mysteries there. There are people who take those mysteries and staple them to other mysteries and then declare that they've actually solved the problem. And so that's not how, no, we don't fully understand consciousness. So there's something else we don't understand. They say, well, let's explain that with consciousness, but you don't understand either. So to take one to explain the other and bask in this is really tentative grounds.
Yeah.
To try to base a foundation of reality on.
Yeah, there's a specific thing that I think people often use in the spiritual community, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle.
Yeah.
They use it to say that because when we measure a particle, it affects the particle. It actually changes what you're seeing. The measuring affects the measurement. That therefore mind controls the universe or controls.
Right, so that's
reality.
another example of consciousness and quantum physics putting them together to try to come up with an explanation. Let me put that to bed quickly. Okay, this is called the observer phenomenon. The particle is doing something when you're not looking at it, and then you look at it and it does something different. And so that's been misunderstood and misapplied and misused, but I can clarify it very easily. And people said your consciousness does it, so therefore your consciousness affects the universe. So no, unfortunately, no. So what's actually happening is, how do you know the particle is there? Well, so you look at it, but still, no. How do you know it's there? Oh, some light has to come from the particle to your eye or to your camera, to your detector, because otherwise you have no information about it. It's completely dark, okay? So I turn on the lights to take a picture, and for small enough particles, it kind of happens for us, but we're too big for it to be measured. Make us really, really little so that we're just particles. Turn on the light in the room, the light hit, because you want to take a picture, the light hits the particle and kicks the particle into a new state. And so now you want to look at the particle, it was there before you turn on the light, and now it's doing something else. It has nothing to do with consciousness and everything to do with, you don't know what the particle is doing until you shine light on it.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's a matter of, and you need the light for your eyes, you need the light for a detector, you need the light for any measurement. And so, that's what's going on. And that would happen with or without your brain.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. I think that that's a really important thing for people to understand in the spiritual community, because I think that it is misunderstood in a lot of circles.
Deeply misunderstood. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's my last question, because we have to wrap this up. And it's really comes down to where do we diverge, the mysticism and science? And I wonder, scientists often think that we can know everything, right? Like you said on Russell Brand's podcast that
you don't leave any stone unturned. Russell Brand podcast.
Epistemology right here. So
wow.
So the history of, so you said on Russell Brand's podcast, the history of what it is to know stuff does not support the contention that there are things that are unknowable, which I love that. I love that quote.
Yeah, I would repeat that even now. Yes.
But couldn't this all just be a dream? Couldn't this whole thing that we're talking about and measuring and doing science about, couldn't we all just be doing this in the dream world?
In whose dream?
Some kind of dream world?
Whose dream?
Who knows? My dream, your dream, the universe's dream, some collective dream.
Okay, so this is the difference between establishing what might be your personal truth. Okay, you feel some way about something, Jesus is your savior. That's your personal truth. Muhammad is the last prophet on earth. That's this other people's personal truth. And then there's an objective truth. An objective truth is what science is in the business of determining. An objective truth is I make a measurement and I get an answer. You're my competitor. So I don't trust anything you do. I'm gonna build a better apparatus, and you do it, and you get the same answer.
Yeah.
And then someone on another side of the world with a different electrical current out of their wall plugs in their machine, they get the same answer. And then you realize, oh my gosh, we're onto something. We have a new emergent objective truth about how the world works. Those truths are true independent of who measures it, what you think about it, or what your belief system is. Hence the quote, science is true whether or not you believe in it. It's not all science. On the frontier, science is very contested. But once it moves its way into the experimentally verified realm, it is true, and your opinion and your thoughts won't matter.
Right.
E equals MC squared goes into bombs and weapons.
Yes,
okay?
I know. I love that.
That way, it's not just somebody's dream.
And that's why I love science so much, because it is objective. It helps us get to Mars. It helps us create internet. It helps us do all these things. But what if all that stuff is happening in some sort of collective dream, or like the
okay? So no, we've already been there. What you're talking about is we're living in a simulation. There's some nerd alien in his parents' basement, hasn't moved out yet, who programmed our world. Okay, if that is the case, they programmed our world with rules. Conservation of momentum, a particle count, the energy equals MC squared. And we're discovering the rules that this snot-nosed alien put into our universe. And maybe they can hit delete and then we all just disappear tomorrow. Sure, that can happen. I cannot rule that out.
Okay, great.
I can say it's a fascinating universe the alien created. If that's...
Yeah, no, definitely. So in that case, we're discovering the rules of this sub-universe that's within the universe of the alien that created it.
Correct. And we're a simulated universe in that computer. Correct.
And then could we ever know the nature of the reality of the universe that the alien is in?
So this is the Truman Show, right? So you'd ask, what happens if I keep exploring this world that I'm in, that the alien created, and then I get to like an edge, and it's like, wait a minute, there used to be stars here. Now there's like a cardboard, a 2x4 and a thing. And maybe this could happen intellectually, even spiritually. Do you reach a limit to what the universe is giving you? And then you can say, okay, I've overdone this. I've completed the simulation. All right. Because the alien didn't program beyond my curiosity. And that would be quite the day.
That would be a day. That would
be a day. It's like the Truman Show. He goes out on the boat and he gets the edge of his universe.
Yes.
That would signal a change in the human condition that I cannot foresee or imagine.
That would be pretty epic. So thank you so much for joining us today, Neil.
And I'll just leave you with a thought. In this, if they find humans entertaining, it could be that they created Earth as a literal terrarium aquarium to put life forms and just sit back and watch it all happen. And maybe they get bored every now and then. They got bored with COVID. They said, throw in monkeypox. Okay. That's my best evidence that we're just entertainment for some.
Yeah, that's God sitting up there with the popcorn.
Yeah, I'm not calling the alien in the basement God. Okay. I'm going
to. Yeah, we could get in trouble with that. So let's not do that. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today, Neil deGrasse Tyson. It has been a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. And this quotes from this interview and excerpts are gonna go be in the Universe issue, which is coming out soon.
Excellent, thank you. And I have a book coming out around then. It's called Cosmic Perspectives on Civilization, and a lot of this point of view is like, what does our behavior look like if you kind of step out to the moon and look down on it? All right, and if you're scientifically literate, what are people doing that they don't even know there's deep inconsistencies in it? So it's an exploration of our mysterious ways as human, and how some form of scientific cosmic enlightenment can make a better world.
That's amazing. So yeah, I guess they'll probably be in Barnes & Noble and Barnes & Noble at least at around the same time, or in October.
Oh, possibly on this. Oh yeah. We're next to your magazine.
Yes, awesome. So everybody go out and buy those two things and
Okay.
you'll be eternally enlightened. Thank you, thank you
Okay.
so much for being here.
Excellent.
And,
Thanks for
have a
having me.
beautiful day. Bye.
Bye.
If you understand deeply the laws of physics, then you know what is possible, what is plausible, and impossible. And so having a good foundation in physics made all the difference in the world. All of biology can be explained in the language of chemistry. All of chemistry can be explained in the language of physics. But all of physics can be explained in the language of relativity, like the Big Bang, and the quantum theory, which gives us transistors and lasers and the internet. The goal is to merge these two great theories to create an equation, 1 inch long maybe, that would allow us to unravel the universe itself. That's the Holy Grail of science. We are all born scientists. When we're born, we want to know why the sun shines. We want to know where we come from. But then we hit the greatest destroyer of scientists known to science. The greatest destroyer of scientists is junior high school. Because in junior high school, that's when scientists made boring memorization, lists of names and facts and figures you're never going to use anyway, that are totally irrelevant. Because, you know, science is based on principles, concepts, physical pictures. That's what drives science, like evolution, like relativity, like Newton's laws. And so that's why we lose so many people in the danger years, 15, 16, 17.
Wow,
Those are the
point.
danger years when we lose millions of young kids. I like to quote Galileo, who once said that the purpose of science is to determine how the heavens go. But the purpose of religion is to determine how to go to heaven, how the heavens go, how the planets move, how the galaxy moves, how to be a good person, how to obey the laws and help your neighbors. But as long as we keep these two things relatively separate, they are complementary. So I don't see any contradiction between the two.
What do you think happens when we die?
I begin to realize that science is closing in on mortality. Genetic immortality is a possibility, and also digital immortality is a possibility. For example, everything known about us can be digitized, our credit card transactions, our emails, to give an approximation of, well, who we are, our digital soul. Why do we die? We die because of the buildup of error. Error in our DNA, errors in our cells because of chaos, the second law of thermodynamics. Things rust, things fall apart, things die. But if you add energy from the outside, you can get around the second law of thermodynamics. For example, with gene therapy, we'll be able to attack aging at 3 levels. One is telomerase. You see, telomerase also is used by cancer cells. Cancer cells are also immortal. That's why they kill you, because they are immortal. And that's one way that cancer cells become immortal. So we have to control telomerase. Second, we know that if you want to live 30% longer, eat 30% less. Why is that? Well, we're not sure, because you slow down the oxidation process. We don't want to eat 30% less. We want to eat lots of food and still live longer. And that gets us into oxidation. Why do cars get old? What ages in a car? Well, it's the engine. Why the engine? Because that's where you have combustion, oxidation, wear and tear. Well, where is the engine of a cell? The mitochondria. Bingo. We now know where errors build up in a cell, the mitochondria. And with gene therapy, with CRISPR technology, one day, I think that maybe our grandkids will hit the age of 30 and stop. They may like being 30 for many decades to come. I think that's well within the realm of possibility, given the rapidity with which we are now unraveling the question, why do we have to die? Well, there is a benefit to dying, and that is on a societal level, you don't want to stagnate. You don't want ideas that are old, crusted, and obsolete to dominate young people who may think differently. So on one hand, you want to transport the wisdom. You want to get the wisdom of a generation and give the next generation that wisdom of life. Because life is more complicated than any simple formula. However, sometimes people begin to get, old and tired, and they want the young generation to be just as old and tired as they are. And that's not a good idea. That will cause stagnation. That's why I say that in the future, when people live forever or live very long, when they hit the age of 30, that's a good age to stop, because you're still young enough to have vibrant ideas, but you still have the wisdom of the first 30 years of your life. Look at it this way. Why do we have to die? Look at the Greenland shark. The Greenland shark lives to be about 500 years of age. We know that because just like tree rings, you can look at the eyeball of the fish, count the rings, and calculate the age of these fish, and they are between 400 to 500 years of age. So in other words, why do we have to die? In the Arctic, where these fish are, metabolism is much slower. And slower metabolism means errors build up slower. And again, that's what aging is, the buildup of genetic and cellular mistakes. They build up, cells get sluggish, they eventually die as a consequence. But in worms, for example, we can actually double their lifespan. And as I mentioned, you can take any animal up to humans and make them live 30% longer. Now, this has not been tested in humans, by the way. It's been tested in dogs, cats, primates. You eat 30% less, you live 30% longer. Why hasn't it been tested in humans? Humans bellyache too much. If they don't like something, they sue you. And who wants to be sued? So in other words, it'll be a while before we test humans by having them eat 30% less. Well, aging backwards would violate the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics says that in a closed system, things decay, things get older, things fall apart, things die. The key word is closed. In a closed system, things naturally get older. In an open system, like you have sunlight, energy from the sun, that can reverse the process. That's how evolution takes place. Evolution should violate the second law of thermodynamics. People get, if you take a look at human evolution, we got smarter, we got more adapted to the environment. Why? Because we had extra energy from the outside, sunlight. Now that open system could be biochemistry. And so biochemistry could replace sunlight and speed up this process. Instead of waiting millions of years for evolution to catch up, we may be able to do it in one generation.
We hope you found this video valuable. Let us know what your opinion on all this is down in the comments section. And don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more content just like this.
What do you think is the mind of Einstein's God? Do you think there's a why that we could untangle from this universe of strings? Why are we here? What is the meaning of it all?
Well, Steven Weinberg, winner of the Nobel Prize, once said that the more we learn about the universe, the more we learn that it's pointless. Well, I don't know. I don't profess to understand the great secrets of the universe. However, let me say two things about what the giants of physics have said about this question. Einstein believed in two types of God. One was the God of the Bible, the personal God, the God that answers prayers, walks on waters, performs miracles, smites the Philistines. Mm-hmm. That's the personal God that he didn't believe in. He believed in the God of Spinoza, the God of order, simplicity, harmony, beauty. The universe could have been ugly. The universe could have been messy, random, but it's gorgeous. You realize that on a single sheet of paper, we can write down all the known laws of the universe. It's amazing. On one sheet of paper, Einstein's equation is 1 inch long. String theory is a lot longer, and so is the standard model. But you could put all these equations on one sheet of paper. It didn't have to be that way. It could have been messy. And so Einstein thought of himself as a young boy entering this huge library for the first time, being overwhelmed by the simplicity, elegance, and beauty of this library. But all he could do was read the first page of the first volume. Well, that library is the universe with all sorts of mysterious, magical things that we have yet to find. And then Galileo was asked about this. Galileo said that the purpose of science is to determine how the heavens go. The purpose of religion is to determine how to go to heaven. So in other words, science is about natural law. And religion is about ethics, how to be a good person, how to go to heaven. As long as we keep these two things apart, we're in great shape. The problem occurs when people from the natural sciences begin to pontificate about ethics and people from religion begin to pontificate about natural law. That's where we get into big trouble.
You think they're fundamentally distinct, morality and ethics, and our idea of what is right and what is wrong. That's something that's outside the reach of string theory and physics.
That's right. If you talk to a squirrel about what is right and what is wrong,
yes,
there's no reference frame for a squirrel. And realize that aliens from outer space, if they ever come visit us, they'll try to talk to us like we talk to squirrels in the forest, but eventually we get bored talking to the squirrels because they don't talk back to us. Same thing with aliens from outer space. When they come down to Earth, they'll be curious about us to a degree, but after a while, they just get bored because we have nothing to offer them. So our sense of right and wrong, what does that mean compared to a squirrel's sense of right and wrong? Now, we, of course, do have an ethics that keeps civilizations in line, enriches our life, and makes civilization possible. And I think that's a good thing, but it's not mandated by a law of physics.
The normal idea of karma and reincarnation is that first of all, time is the ultimate reality of our experience. Our entire experience takes place in time, the universe, in time and space. The universe appears in time and space. The world appears in the universe. And then at some stage we are born as a body into the world. In that body there is a brain. In that brain there is a mind. And in that mind there is consciousness. That's the normal view of things. And therefore, as a concession to that view of things, the teaching says, depending on your thoughts and activities, when you die, all that happens is that your body dies and all the store of unspent energies in your mind will roam around. They don't quite say where, but because nobody's ever seen that kind of store of unspent energies floating around in time or space. Okay, we'll call them that's it. Let's make up a place called Bardos. That's fine. So that's a nice kind of fits. So then these unspent energies float around in the Bardos for a while, and then at some stage, they, in order to spend themselves, they need a body to release these energies, so they take another body. Now, if they're lucky, if they've behaved well and had nice thoughts, they get reincarnated in California. If they're not so lucky, it's Shropshire are for the few elite who have behaved so impeccably well. But and then, okay, it's bad luck. They spend their time in Shropshire. They do their best to improve themselves. They have nice thoughts and do nice deeds. They die. Their store of unspent energies is not quite as large as it was, and it has been to a certain extent purified of all the nasty bits. So there's more chance next time they'll get born, maybe not in California, but nearby Sedona or somewhere like that. Maui or so. And then with this approach, with this view, it's possible to explain things like why the concentration camps happened. Mm-hmm. It's easy. The guys that did the perpetrating were just the really bad guys. Mm-hmm. And actually, the poor guys that were suffering were also the really bad ones. Mm-hmm. They deserved to suffer. Mm-hmm. So,
or they could be purifying their karma.
Or they were given this gift of suffering in order to purify this unspent. There are various interpretations of it. And although when we hear these interpretations, it's not very satisfying. Mm-hmm. All we could do, in order to, how could that be satisfying? You just have to believe it. You just have to think, okay, my master told me it was like that. Therefore, it's like that. We don't know it's like that. Mm-hmm. It's not our experience. So it's only the relief we get from adopting that attitude is only as strong as our belief that it is true. Mm-hmm. But our beliefs are so fickle. What happens if your master dies and you find another master and he says, no, it's not true? What are you going to do then? Are you going to cling on to your old belief in order to get some relief from the pain of this suffering?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. As you know, at best it's a belief that we cling to.
Right.
But actually, the more deeply we go into our experience, the less possible it is for us to cling to any belief.
Mm-hmm. So then what we're left with is a mystery. I mean, it's to me, it seems that there's such a diversity of experience.
Hang on, before we get to the mystery, we can just go a little bit closer to our experience. Because I'm trying to answer your question about cause and effect and karma, and let's now drop this whole model of karma and reincarnation on the understanding that it is based on a presumption. Mm-hmm. It is a concession to the belief that I, the body, was born into the world and the world exists in time and space. It's a theory of reincarnation that is in line with that belief.
I believe
now,
that.
Here, we don't have that view of experience. Our experience is not first there is time and space, then there is a universe, then there is a world, then there is a body, then there is a mind. Then there is a brain, then there is a mind, and then there is consciousness. That is not our experience. Mm-hmm. Our experience is first there is consciousness. Mm-hmm. And consciousness, if we can talk about it, imagine it as a space like consciousness. Consciousness, like time and space in the previous model, is the biggest element of experience. Mm-hmm. And inside consciousness is mind. And inside the mind is matter. In other words, the body and the world from this point of view, and this point of view is just the point of view of experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's not theory. It's closer to our, it's not a perfect model, but it's a model that is much closer to our experience.
Mm-hmm.
First there is consciousness. Consciousness modulates. It is the substance of consciousness itself that takes the shape of mind. And I mean mind in the broadest sense of the term, thinking, sensing and perceiving. And it is only thought in the form of thinking that conceptualizes separate objects made out of stuff called matter. So from this point of view, objects, the world, the body, are the smallest element of experience. Mind is bigger than the world, and consciousness is bigger than mind. So now look at your point of view, look at your life, your experience from that point of view. First there is consciousness. And think of it in terms of the three states of deep sleep, dreaming and waking. Remember, we had these three elements: consciousness, mind, matter. In the conventional point of view, it's matter, mind, consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from the conventional point of view, the point of view that says there is matter, mind, consciousness, the waking state is considered to be the most real state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And the waking state corresponds to matter, because the waking state is made out of stuff called objects. So the biggest state, the primary state, is the waking state. When we fall asleep, we go out of the waking state and we lose contact with matter. It's just made out of mind. And in deep sleep, which is considered to be from the conventional point of view, the most unreal of all our experiences. The waking state is the most real.
Mm-hmm.
Dreams is pretty unreal, and deep sleep is completely unreal. There's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
This corresponds to this tiny little spark of consciousness in the middle of the mind. Now, from the point of view of our experience, it's the other way round. Consciousness is the biggest world. Inside that, mind takes place. Inside that, the body and the world take place. So consciousness corresponds to deep sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Deep sleep is the most real state. Yeah? Because it's just pure consciousness. Now, from this point of view, deep sleep doesn't come to an end when the dream state begins. It's that deep sleep itself, pure consciousness, vibrates within itself and takes the shape of mind and appears as the dream state. Yeah? So pure consciousness takes the shape of mind, thinking, sensing and perceiving. That is just mind. That corresponds to the dream state, which takes place in deep sleep, not after deep sleep. You haven't gone from one state to another state. You have remained pure consciousness. Pure consciousness by itself corresponds to deep sleep. Consciousness starts vibrating within itself. It begins to take form, thinking, sensing and perceiving, and appears as the dream. And then in the form of thought, it conceptualizes separate objects. And those separate objects become the waking state.
Mm-hmm.
So from that point of view, the waking state is the most unreal state. In other words, the state in which we think there are separate objects made out of matter, known by a separate subject, made out of stuff called mind, is the least real state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is why it says in the Bhagavad Gita, what for the sage, for the sage, the waking state is, I'm paraphrasing now, what is the waking state for the ignorant is sleep for the sage.
Mm.
And what is sleep for the ignorant is waking or daytime for the sage.
Mm-hmm.
The sage means pure consciousness. So with this completely new model of our experience, which is simply a model that is based on what we actually experience. Now think of, again, of cause and effect.
Yeah, well, cause and effect.
Think of how the residues that are left in the mind materialize in the form of the body and the world. Mm-hmm. And this is actually what happens in a dream state. When you fall asleep at night, your body and your world disappear, but there is a residue that is left over, that is just made out of pure mind. And in your dream, you create a new body and a new world. So for instance, if during the waking state you were very fearful, let's say you had a very fearful disposition, when you fall asleep, you find yourself reborn as a new person in a new world. And the fear that you felt inside of yourself in the waking state now manifests in your environment outside of you. So you find yourself as a new body, a brand new body that you get in the dream state, and you find that you are in a war zone and you're terrified.
A nightmare.
The fear that you felt on the inside in the waking state has materialized as your environment in the dream state, and you then identify with a body. You think, I, this body, am experiencing this fearful environment. But it's actually the fear that was inside you in the waking state that has manifested as a threatening situation in your environment. And this is I think, not a perfect model of reincarnation, but a much better one. One that is much closer. That we go from the waking state, or we seem to go from the waking state. What was inside us in the waking state becomes our environment in the dream state.
Right.
And then we seem to pass out of the dream state into deep sleep, where we get some relief. But then the dream state starts again, we get a new body in a new world, and then we come back to the waking state. Now, why couldn't exactly the same thing happen at death? We don't die out of this body and hover around in a bardo and then get reborn in London or Shropshire or wherever it is. Why couldn't it be that we actually stay where we always are, where we have always been, pure consciousness? That we take the shape of mind, thought abstracts a body, and a world. When that body and world dies, when thought, in other words, when thought ceases to abstract a body and a world, that's the death of the body, mind continues. We don't go anywhere because we are this dimensionless consciousness in which this mind is taking place, and in which the body and the world previously took place. Now, the body has disappeared with its world, but mind continues. That's what the Tibetans call the bardo. And then at some stage, thought conceptualizes and a new body and a new world from this pure mind experiences, and then we find ourselves in another world. But that world takes place it's always been in us. The whole thing has happened in us.
Yeah.
I don't know how clear a description that is. That's kind of
it's
hard to
It's
explain.
an alternative model that challenges me.
Sorry?
It's an alternative model that I've never
Well, it's an alternative model. It's not a perfect model. No models are perfect, but it's one that is based on our experience and is consistent with our experience. At least it's consistent with our experience now. And also, we are using a hint. And the hint is the three states. And do you think it's just a coincidence that there happen to be three states? A waking state made out of objects, a waking state consisting of objects made out of matter, a dream state consisting of mind, and deep sleep consisting of just being, just consciousness. Is that just a coincidence? Matter, mind, consciousness. We rehearse this every single day of our lives. There's such a clue there as to the nature of reality. It's a clue that we rehearse this death process every single day.
Well, what I see you're doing is you're making deep sleep central, and the waking state.
Yes, exactly. I'm saying that deep sleep is the most real experience, and the waking state, it's not that the waking state is unreal. All experience is equally real, but it's the way thought conceptualizes the waking state to consist of objects made out of matter, moving around in time and space. That is the least real.
Right.
So I'm completely turning experience upside down and basing it on our experience, which is that consciousness is primary.
Right. So
mind is secondary, matter is tertiary. The conventional view is that matter is primary, mind is a byproduct of matter, secondary, and consciousness is a byproduct of mind, tertiary.
So what you could say is that the belief in karma may actually create that particular reality, but that it's not a particularly wise belief to have.
What I'm saying is that the theory of karma is not completely wrong. There's some intelligence to the karma, but the way it is presented normally makes a concession to the conventional dualistic point of view that matter is the biggest element of experience, then mind, then consciousness. So there is some truth at a relative level to karma, but the conventional way of thinking of it is simplistic and is dependent upon this very childish view we have of experience. If you turn the whole thing upside down and start with consciousness, inside which is the mind, inside which is matter, you can still think in terms of cause and effect. But it makes much more sense. It's much closer to our experience. And then you go to the hint of the three states of waking, dream, and you understand, I don't go out of the waking state into the dream state and then out of the dream state into deep sleep. I am always in deep sleep, which is not a state, and therefore we have to say it is actually beyond deep sleep, Turiya, because it is no longer, it's not a state. But let's leave that for the moment. It's making pure consciousness the biggest element, which is represented by deep sleep. Mind takes place in consciousness. Matter takes place in mind.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the effort you put into your answer.
It's not something that is easy to describe, and it's a little challenging to.
Yes, well, I appreciate you taking up the challenge.
Karma. Stop bouncing the ball. This was an absolutely incredible session of karma. It was probably the most simplest and practical solution that I've ever heard. She was amazing in her presentation. Karma has always been somewhat of a mystery to me. I never knew exactly what it was and the mechanics of how it operated. Yes, I know the theory for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. I know about good karma and bad karma. But the process to stop karma in its tracks and eliminate karma is altogether a different subject. Mind you, I've been studying this for over 50 years now. And this presentation gave me more incredible insight into karma and how it works. The teacher gave a grand analogy. Suppose you have a ball that you are bouncing. Imagine every action you take, you are bouncing the ball. You take an action and you bounce the ball automatically, whether you like it or not. The ball will bounce back. That statement alone is incredible, that you are responsible for the bouncing of the ball. Nobody else bounces your ball. She goes on and says that the bouncing of the ball has been occurred for thousands of years. We are on a treadmill that isn't going anywhere. To stop this, she simply said, stop bouncing the ball. When one stops bouncing the ball doesn't react. When you stop bouncing the ball, it will take a very short time for the ball just to sit on the ground and do nothing. I also like the fact that she said karma is not conscious aware. If it was, we would be in serious trouble because we would have a God that judges us for every action we take. Fortunately, karma, the ball, is not aware and is just simply a force of the universe that can be overcome in one's life. The goal is to stop bouncing the ball and at the same time be in a state of self-realization within. I give the analogy of being in the center of a hurricane. Humanity is like leaves blowing in the wind. Karma is chains that bind us. It doesn't matter if the chains are made of gold or some simple metal material. Either way, the chain will bind us. The more one stops bouncing the ball, the greater the realization will be. One will be in the center of the hurricane and not understand the great mysteries of life. When one learns to live in the soul, one truly becomes a human being. We were never taught this in our schools. Maybe the Jains have, but we most definitely didn't learn them. This course has much more subtle in my practice. It truly is fine-tuning the guitar of life. Every action we take, karma has taken place, and yet we are oblivious to it. We strive for happiness in our life. We think a great job, a mansion, and a yacht are the secrets to a good life. We never realize that even by acquiring these, we still have golden chains bound to our souls. Ultimately, that will never make us happy. I'm quite impressed by the Jains who discovered this thousands of years ago. Can you imagine coming up with such a great realization and then putting it into such sublime words? Future generations could use the roadmap for their own liberation. I find that extremely daunting and incredible to see. We can learn from the wise men of the past. Unfortunately, we are so blinded that we truly can't believe something like this even exists. Every day we moan and groan about the circumstances in our life. We don't realize that we are responsible for what comes our way. Curveballs will be thrown at you. That is the fact of life. Everything morphs and changes. I mean, everything. When one understands that life is like a merry-go-round, it goes round and around and around. When a person gets tired of this ride, he wants to get off the ride. The only way to get off this ride is to press the red button inside of you and stop the merry-go-round inside of you. When one leaves the merry-go-round, one lives in his true essence. You are the universe and you just don't know. We live our lives thinking this is the ultimate reality. We are merely skimming the surface of the ocean of life. This may seem like an esoteric subject, which it isn't. This is the basic foundation of your life. We are talking about you and how you can understand your true nature. The wise men of old have studied this for thousands of years. They have great instruction manuals for you to read and implement in your life. What good is a driver's manual if you never drive your car? You have a car that has been sitting in your inner garage. The garage door is closed. The car is full of cobwebs and spider webs. One may have faint glimpses of the car exists inside. The goal of human life is to take that car out for a spin on the freeway of life. You were meant to drive that precious car. That car is your true existence. That freedom that you seek, that happiness that you seek, that joy that you seek, it all lies inside of you. This car is who you truly are. One who has become so identified externally that we have forgotten our true nature. I would highly advise you, if you want to have a happy life, to try this in your life. Maybe the next time some instance comes your way and you could get angry about the situation, just hesitate and don't react at all. Practice this over and over again. You will see that situation no longer bothers you at all. In fact, by not responding at all, you remain calm. Calmness is your true nature. Getting flustered and angry is not your true nature. Even if something good comes your way, do the same thing. You will see that you have been driven by your emotions and mind. When you experience positive emotions, life is good. When you experience negative emotion, life is a drag and a burden. We live our entire life this way. We blame others for our mistakes. We think that we have done something wrong. We think other people's lives are better than ours. We have all these different feelings about how life is treating us. We can get off this bandwagon and experience life as it truly is. Life is absolutely incredible. Life is full of love, joy, and creativity. We should be like a surfer taken off of the wave of a lifetime. Once he is in the zone, one is not thinking about making the wave or wiping out. A surfer is in the flow with the wave of life and becomes one with it. He doesn't know how to do fancy tricks or try to outmaneuver the wave. He doesn't get into the contest of life and see who's the better surfer. I lost that heat by less than 1 point. He doesn't get into the competition side of surfing. Surfing is an art and allows one to be in harmony with the universe and nature. We are all surfers. That wave exists inside of you. You can learn how to surf the wave and be in clarity every moment in your life. One who learns how not to react to any given situation is truly a wise man. A wise man simply smiles at life. There's nothing to say or prove. Unfortunately, we have plenty to say or prove. If someone doesn't think the way we do, we let them have it. We will tell them they're wrong and I am right. My religion is better than your religion. My ideas are better than your ideas. Wars have been started this way. When one lives in the scattered winds of the mind, chaos occurs. We have seen this going on for thousands of years with no end in sight. To make this world a better place, you must make your inner world a better place. For peace on earth to occur, you must establish peace inside of you. There's a battle going on inside of you. The mind is constantly biting you. It's like a mosquito bite that gets agitated over and over again. At times, the mosquito bite seems to go away, and then, for some unknown reason, they start biting you again. You itch and can't quite find out how to stop the itching. I remember for around 20 years, even when I first started meditating, my stomach was never truly satisfied. It always had a tinge of anxiousness to it. Meditation makes one aware of your inner feelings. Yet one day, I woke up and it never came back again. Meditation and concentration is the way to remove issues that have been hiding inside of us. Each one of us has different issues to deal with. Each one of us has different karma that affects us. For your own material happiness, I hope maybe you might take this to heart. You might see that externally, if I focus only to that, I will not change for the better. I will continue to go on and on this merry-go-round. Granted, you may obtain all the goals that you want externally. You may have all the money in the world. You may be able to travel wherever you want, whenever you want, and for as long as you want. But tell me, does that make you truly satisfied? Only a wise man who has conquered his mind was truly satisfied. The only one who discovers how to live in the center of the hurricane is satisfied. You can own the entire world, yet you're still living like leaves blowing in the wind. Alexander the Great conquered much of the world, yet he was completely unsatisfied. He even said, I come into this world empty-handed, and I leave on my deathbed empty-handed. I say the spiritual path is the most practical path. One must have his feet on the ground and his head in heaven. We can go on forever bouncing the ball of karma. We have been doing this for eons as it is. We have the opportunity for this message to truly sink in, at the same time to go in one ear and out the other. The mind can say, you don't want this. You like that as you like life as it is, and you don't want to change it. Well, that's okay. We're not here to change you. You must change yourself. All we are saying there is a road that you can travel on inside of you. You are born a traveler. Currently, you are a wanderer. A wanderer doesn't even know that he has a true home. We wander aimlessly in this world. We are searching for something externally, when all we have to do is look inside for the answer. It is as simple as that. Somehow we think the spiritual life is for those who have high intelligence. My intelligence is average. I couldn't even answer one single question during the Jane lecture series. But did that stop me? No, it didn't. I know the next day, when I got up, if I went over the material and wrote what I discovered, I would understand what they were talking about. This path is a path meant to be pondered over. One must contemplate and ponder over life to understand life. The Jains have been on this for thousands of years. Even in my early days of meditation, I didn't understand the true meaning of pondering. I didn't understand the importance of why one should ponder. I see these young, incredible kids presenting short introductions to each class. Some are only 10 years old and already have such great wisdom. You are the company that you keep. These kids have incredible mentors like their parents and grandparents. They have their aunts and uncles and friends. When I was in India, I heard many stories in which they said, "You are the company that you keep." If you keep company with a band of people that love to steal items from others, then you will become a thief. We emulate our external surroundings. I grew up in Newport Beach, California, and the culture around me was high class and refined. The people there are great. I love growing up. I still have many of my friends today, yet somehow I knew I had something inside of me that I could not tap into externally. I must admit, I'm not conventional at all. At times, I am an outcast. I buck the system. I know that no matter how incredible my life was up to that point, there's something inside of me that was so much more than I can ever imagine. I know that there were 5 senses. We lived that way our entire life. Yet I knew we had 5 internal senses. These are doorways to the soul. Going back to the bouncing ball, the deeper our understanding this true nature, the easier it will be to stop bouncing the ball. Even if one doesn't have a great meditation practice, one can learn to consciously stop the urge to react. Yes, this will take practice. Rome was not built in a day. It must go from your consciousness to your subconsciousness. Currently, 95% of your subconscious is running the show. Yet, you can overcome this by your will. They say a wise man sees his mind in motion, sets his mind in motion by his will, not the other way around. We live our lives with the mind commanding us what to do. We are not in command of our minds. That is a major difference. The Jains are incredible psychologists, and we are barely skimming the surface. The majority of our minds are unclear and experience so much internal stress and chaos. We have not been trained on how to have a healthy mind. Yes, unfortunately, we think there's nothing wrong with me. I love my lifestyle, and what can I do with it? Look at my life. No matter how much glamour and getting one as one must understand that the jewel exists inside of you. There's a video game going on. You are part of this game. There's an infinite amount of levels to go through. For thousands of years, we have just been on level 0. This is the most basic level where mankind fights with one another. We have slogans like the 60s, where in like the 80s, where Wall Street would say, greed is good. We have mass shootings at schools. We refuse to have gun laws because it takes away our freedom. I could go on and on and on. We are responsible for the world external. We can make this world a better place. A wise man understands that he can stop karma in its tracks. By doing so, he fulfills his piece of the puzzle in life. You can do this if you like. Our world would be in a better place if we all simply did this in every moment of our lives. Our lives would be so much richer and grander than our current state of existence. We can truly solve all the world's problems. Can you imagine if you discovered your true nature? The universe could provide answers to all our problems of life. We would not have the junk food industry, which is causing disaster in our bodies all around the world. I find it amusing. They know their food makes people addictive, and yet they still do it because it makes them great wealth. No wonder they call this the age of darkness. Common sense is uncommon. Going back to karma again, I would like to thank the teacher for presenting such an awesome subject in a way that I truly understood. She made it so practical, and at the same time, I could understand what I can do practically to stop karma in its tracks. I apologize to anyone if I have said anything that may contain misinformation. The more attention you pay. One of my favorite mottos is the following: the more attention you pay to something, the more attention it pays to you. Most of us live our lives 24 hours a day and only focus externally. We never think, what is the purpose of life? We simply just go on living life as usual. At some point in your life, you realize it is transitory, it is impermanent. Usually, that happens on your deathbed. The wise man prepares for his death. Even long before he dies, he realizes that life and death are the same things. Physical death is a rebirth and going back home. This is the purpose of life, to realize your true existence while you are alive. This may seem like a broken record because your mindset is not used to it. We don't have a proper understanding to realize the sacredness and holiness of this human body. We take it for granted.
Don't shut the door of life. It was meant to be open. Unfortunately, man has closed the door to life. What is beyond the door? You are the universe. You just don't know it. You are the sun, moon, and stars. You are the great mystery. Only you can open the door within. Did you know there is a field of life that ripples everywhere? It ripples faster than you can read these words. It is felt instantaneously all across the universe. How about that? We haven't even developed anything near the speed of light, yet the field transfers information instantly. Do you see how your actions affect the universe? Did you ever ponder that over? Your anger ripples across the universe. Is it worth it? Now is the time to change. Be kind. Your kindness will ripple everywhere. Your light will shine everywhere. You can be a true beacon. You have no idea how grand you are. The universe is rooting you on. You have a grand part in this play. You are the main actor. Ponder these words.
The sculpture. One of my major goals is not to be rattled by life. It is extremely difficult. Sometimes we can hit a curveball out of the park, while other times we just strike out. We are constantly learning in this adventure of life. Nobody gets a free ride. Even the Christ had to work on himself. Once upon a time, I heard a story about the Dalai Lama. Every night before he goes to bed, he goes over all his activities of the day. He sees where he can improve in each and every situation. It's the small changes that matter in life. We are all divine sculptures. Nobody can change us. We have to change ourselves. The world would be a better place if we all did so. It's not easy, yet ultimately it's our destiny. We are the universe. We just don't know it. Just think, even scientists know that our bodies are made of stardust. We came from the stars. The Indians say this world is an illusion. It's like going to the movies. We get sucked into the drama. Yet just turn your head around and you will see light streaming from the projector. The light hits the screen and creates a moving picture. Ponder this over. You are a sculpture.
A reason to stop worrying. My wife yesterday stumbled upon this YouTube video entitled, A Reason to Stop Worrying. I found this video to be extremely full of wisdom. It was also extremely funny and somehow show how sucked in we are to this external existence. Years ago, I saw graffiti at Buffalo State University, which I still remember to this day. It said, "There's no gravity, the world sucks." This YouTube video should help you if you want to see a whole different perspective of who you truly are. We place such an incredible amount of energy on worrying. We are missing the picture. Instead of looking at the projector or light, we instead place all our attention on the movie screen. Consequently, we get sucked in. It doesn't matter if it's a good scene or a bad scene. The result is still the same. We get sucked in and think, this is so real.
Intro. Who am I? Man has been asking this question for thousands of years. Yet are we getting closer to answering this question? All the wise ones of the past said that answer lies inside. I say this a lot. You are the universe. You just don't know it. Most people roll their eyes when I say this. Michio Kaku said the following: in string theory, all particles are vibration on a tiny rubber band. Physics is the harmonies on the string. Chemistry is the melodies we play on vibrating strings. The universe is a symphony of strings, and the mind of God is cosmic music resonating in 11-dimensional hyperspace. I love this example from Paramahansa Yogananda. Another time, I was sitting in a movie theater watching a movie on a screen. And then I looked into the projection booth. I saw that the projectionist was not interested in the movie because he had seen it over and over again. Instead, he was reading a book. The projector was doing its job
There was the sound, and the beam of light was casting realistic images on the screen, and there was the audience caught up in the drama. Note the wise men of old and the quantum scientists are both talking about the same thing, but there is a huge difference. The quantum scientist looks external, while the wise man looks within. The sages throughout time would talk about our true nature, yet the majority of people roll their eyes when hearing about this. This book goes through all sorts of angles for you to ask yourself these basic questions on life. If you can try to have your heart open, we are thinking outside of your box. There's a part of you the heart knows when love wants to open the door inside of you.
Time. Time is so elusive. When I was in second grade, that summer seemed like it lasted forever. Today, summer passes like a thief in the night. Yesterday, I had to go to the bathroom 3 minutes before the alarm was going to go off. I knew I didn't have enough time to go to the bathroom and come back in time before the alarm would go off. Mind you, my wife was in a deep sleep. I didn't want the alarm clock to rattle her out of her sleep. Those 3 minutes seemed like an eternity. I remember looking at the clock about 3 times and couldn't believe how slow time passed. I could meditate for hours and time has passed by in no time. I think that the body and mind are the foundation of time being slowed down or fast. There's even a point where time simply doesn't exist. Wiseman says there is only the now. The past and future simply don't exist. Yet we grow old and die. Life is a grand illusion. I love the analogy of going to the movies. Most people see the images on the screen and get sucked into the drama. A wise man turns his head around and sees the projector of lights bouncing off the screen and creating a picture. In the quantum field, there is no time and space. There is only the now. Mystics have known this for thousands of years. There is only the now. They were the modern-day scientists of their times. One who tries to be conscious of the power behind the breath in each and every moment will understand this riddle. The external world, body, and mindset determines your passage of time. The same external event will be a different sense of time for each individual. Each person will experience time differently. As Ram Dass once said, "Be here now." The floor drops underneath you. My twin brother and I went on this ride called the Whirlpool at Pacific Ocean Park. Imagine a simple ride where you're on a wall and they start turning the wall. It goes faster and faster. When it first started spinning around, my brother and I looked at each other and thought, what a corny ride this was. We had no idea what was going to happen next. At some point, the floor literally dropped underneath you. It was terrifying. This ride used the science of centrifugal forces in a so-called mundane ride. This was a science experiment performed right between your eyes. It was simple, such a simple ride, yet it totally blew our minds. How fast is Earth moving? At the equator, around 1,037 miles per hour. Wow, what an incredible ride we are on. Yet, we are texting on the freeway of life. The greatest amusement rides are all around us. We are alive and oblivious of our true nature. You are the universe. You just don't know it. A wise man once said, go within and let the floor underneath you fall. You will experience the secrets of life itself. We are all interconnected. There's no separation between us. Ask any quantum scientist. They will tell you the same. Turn around in this movie of life. You will see a projector shining a light on the screen of life. This will show you your true nature. It's so easy to get sucked into the drama of the movie. When you see the light within, the drama of life slowly fades away. Maya. I first encountered this word in India 50 years ago. It means illusion. Illusion means the appearance may seem real, but in reality, they are not. Modern day scientists and the wise men of old are talking about the same thing. The whole world is an illusion. When I was 18 years old, I read the autobiography of a yogi. One of my favorite parts was when Yogananda went to a movie theater. The audience was captured by the movie. Yet what was causing the movie to be a movie? There was a projector sending lights which hit the screen and created the illusion of a movie. Well, the wise men of old said the same thing about this world and the universe. Quantum scientists have come to the same conclusion. Yet despite this, we are still living in the Newtonian era. We focus only on the external. A wise man focuses on both the external and internal. Humanity sees only 1% of the light spectrum when looking external. There is so much more. We have the hardware, software, and operating system to see the source of all. Maya is sometimes defined as a web of illusion. Mankind gets trapped in it. Mind you, we don't even think we are trapped. That's called the ultimate delusion. We are so trapped that when someone says we are trapped, we simply roll our eyes. Somehow, we are living in a state of apathy and are quite content with it. Today, fiction is truth and truth is fiction. As a nation, We aren't in uproar about this. We are complacent. By bending the truth, it has become the norm. When morals and ethics go out the door in everyday life, the world will become more chaotic. Chaos comes from a mind that has no discipline. A disciplined mind is a mind that is in harmony. To go beyond disillusion is the purpose of life. You can solve this puzzle.
You are the universe. Just think, if you stretched out one DNA cell, it would be 6 feet long. And if you uncoiled each strand and placed them end to end, do this for all your DNA, and the resulting strand would be 67 billion miles long, the same as about 150,000 round trips to the moon. One of Little Ricky's favorite motto is that you are the universe, and you just don't know it. He has said that numerous times in his life. Little Ricky is almost 70 years old. In fact, in only a few weeks, he and his brother John will be 70. Both of them are quite active today in researching how to become a better human being at all levels. They are fascinated by life and death. Many moons ago, they never would approach the subject of death. When they were young, death was a word that you did not use in everyday life. As they got older, both of them were conscious that death someday will be knocking on their door. They knew this quite young, and that's why they wanted to know the mysteries of life and death. This human body contains the mysteries of the universe. Behind your breath lies the secret that is keeping you alive. When you take your last breath, you will no longer exist. Prem Rawat said recently, you can't even take your name when you die. Just think, even the universe goes through the same life and death processes that we do. Everything created is ultimately gets destroyed. Nothing external lasts forever. Meanwhile, we still love to text on the freeway of life and are oblivious to the universe that lies within. Closing. I had an incredible time researching and writing this book about Spinoza. It seems to me the world would be a better place if humanity wasn't divorced from nature. This seems to be one of the main problems of this world today. We live in an egocentric world where consumerism is the name of the game. We firmly believe that indigenous people are primitive, yet they have been custodians of the land for thousands of years. They believe in being custodians for future generations. They believe in living a lifestyle that is in harmony with nature and the universe. Fortunately, most of the civilized world hardly pays any attention to the grandeur of the universe. We go on texting on the freeway of life. We place so much more interest in our cell phones than in nature and in all its glories. We are oblivious. Miracles are all around us, and yet we ignore them and don't see them. I find it fascinating that most scientists embrace Spinoza's philosophy of my God. In my opinion, there is no right or wrong. One can meditate for 1 trillion years and still recognize that it's a small drop in the infinite ocean. Personally, I love to live my life in awe of nature, the universe, and the jewel within. Man tends to have blinders and only sees the external world and its problems. He is constantly striving to find happiness in a world where happiness does not exist. Spinoza tries to make sense of the mess that we have created. He was a great man for his time. The Christians and the Jewish people had a hard time with his ideas. He got excommunicated from his Jewish faith. He was an innovator for his time.